Hello, here we are having our Coping Live Talk again every Saturday at 5 p.m. And every time we have a new guest. And Brigette Gildemaster is our guest today. She will be talking about freedom from toxic relationship. And what a topic. So we go live at 5 p.m. And Candy Sheehan is our host today. Thank you, Candy, so much for being here. And thank you, Brigette, for your time and also for your desire and your readiness to reveal how dangerous toxic relationships can be. So please introduce yourself, and then we will have lots of questions every time, maybe when you touch a painful side of a toxic relationship. So please.
My story started about 5 years ago now, actually this month. When I had to leave my husband, we had, marital problems, obviously, and that kind of thing. But then it came out that he had sexual desires towards my 1-year-old daughter at the time. And I was 4 months pregnant with a second daughter. So I packed up everything and left. So in hindsight now, I was a very naive, good little Christian girl and didn't know so much of the details that were going on behind the scenes in my relationship building up to that point. And now I can look back on it and see how there was so much narcissism and manipulation and, stuff going on in the background too. And so from that, I've just learned to make boundaries for myself, to speak up for myself. I've had to learn how valuable I am, how much, it really was for me to step up for my kids even and realize their value and their worth. It's been actually very shocking to me how many women don't walk away from a situation like that. And I just want everyone to know that they can and they need to, and whatever their excuses are, it's not worth it, And so that's my huge, really big passion, is to spread that against, toxicity and manipulation. Like, you don't deserve to be in that kind of relationship. You don't deserve to be treated that way. I'm Christian, so I believe, God values us way more than that. He does not treat us like that. He does not, want us to be treated like that. So that's, in a nutshell, my story a little bit too.
Thank you for sharing the introduction, who you are, and also partially how painful your story is, and especially how many young women start relationships and going into marriage with their eyes open and full trust and loving heart, and especially, like you mentioned, Christian girls, very naive, maybe too trustful, and then your eyes opened. So again, today we are talking about freedom from toxic relationships. And also, I want to introduce our viewers that you will cover two topics, subtopics. One will be confidence and self-love, and another one is narcissism. Huge topic. So self-love is something that I know Christianity promotes as Christ's commandment. But somehow we remember the first part, love your neighbor. Mm-hmm. But love yourself, we're kind of, very kind of vague about that. But also confidence for women in society where we still have sexism and gender equality is not yet established perfectly in our world. And especially in other countries, because we have viewers in other countries as well, where it's kind of hierarchy and male-dominant society. That's hard. And of course, to develop confidence in the workplace, even in the church, sometimes is hard. But another one will be narcissism. So let's begin with the first subtopic. Unless you want to have a general introduction first to the overall freedom from toxic relationship. What does it mean to you? Freedom from toxic relationship.
Yeah, for me, ironically, I've really only come to it in the last year. Growth is such a process. It's such a journey. And I'm even learning that I'm really excited for the next 5 years because I'll even know more, if we just keep going down this journey of self-growth, you just learn more and more every year. And so I think I've really been able to put into words this last year what that truly means to have freedom from a toxic relationship. And it's it is truly and authentically being yourself and making no excuses for that, and leaning into everything that you believe and how you feel you need to be treated, and how you treat others is how you should be treated. And really, I mean, how biblical is that? But it all gets so lost in the church and ourselves. And so, to live in that freedom in Christ and in grace, we're completely clean slate. Nothing we can truly do, is evil or horrible. If we're living a life towards Christ, we're trying to please Him and trying to do those things. We're not going to do things that are wrong. And I think so much in the Christian community, we live in this fear of, well, I don't want to offend anybody, or I don't want to step on toes, or I don't want to, and it's, if a desire has been put on your heart to move forward and to speak up and to continue with something, Christ put that desire in you, and maybe some toes need to be stepped on a little bit, and that's okay, and so to live in that freedom, for me, truly is just letting go of analyzing life in the little details, what was said, what wasn't said, and going back and forth and making sure everybody's happy and finding that complete and total calm and peace, and just pushing forward and for your goals and the goals of your family and the overall, betterment of community and your church, or your like I said, your community, and it's so hard still for me to describe, I guess, because I'm still not finding those exact words I'm looking for. But there's just such a freedom in not being oppressed by somebody else, whether it is in a relationship, whether it is from a person empowerment. It could be a boss, it could be a church leader. I've dealt with that. It could be parents, even in your older years. There's such a freedom in just being who you are and who Christ designed you to be.
I would like to ask a question before we go on to, about self-confidence and self-love. The question I would have for you, in the Christian community, we say when we take that vow, we take it seriously. It's for better or worse. How do you determine when it goes beyond what can be saved? We want people to try to save their marriage as they can, but do you have any advice for someone if they're listening now and they're trying to decide, is it so bad I've got to leave, or can this be repaired? How do you have any advice for someone if they were in that position?
A very good question. Very, very hard question to answer that is not addressed in the church at all. But I think it goes back to that self-love and Christ and how He views us and how He treats us. There are so many verses, and I'm not very good at remembering verses and their references and their context, but I can find them for you. But there are so many verses about how God talks about how He loves us, how He treats us, how He does things for us daily, and that is what we need to be looking for in a spouse. And that is so forgotten. Instead, we write it off as, well, we're simple human beings. We rather just suck it up and live with it. And that's not what God does. That's not how He treats us. And again, it goes back to how I treat other people. I don't do that to other people. I don't, manipulate them into getting what I want. I don't lie to them. I don't twist things. I don't live in a life of chaos and crazy in circles, And when you're around that person and those things are happening and going on, it's time to walk away. There's some really great resources out there. Flying Free is one of them. She has a quiz that you can take that will determine, whether you should be looking at, if you're in a toxic relationship, is it you, is it them? Because, we all come to the table with wounds and, histories and pasts and things like that. And so that is something, sometimes you're just triggered by something. It's not actually a horrible toxic thing. It was just your reaction to something that's happened to you previously. And so of course it's something to look at and talk about. But I think for me, the biggest problem is when that other partner isn't communicating with you. When you bring up things and they aren't responding appropriately or handling it appropriately with you, or when they never bring up something, there's also that aspect where they never bring the problems to the table. Be we need to work on this. What's going on? That openness. We have that open relationship with God. He talks to us about anything, and we can take anything to Him. And when a spouse or a partner isn't doing that back and forth, and you aren't growing and moving forward together, there's definitely a problem.
And that's an excellent question, Candy. Thank you so much. Because it's true, especially for Christian women, it's very hard to find the strength. And also, criticism from the surrounding congregation, people whom you know since sometimes childhood. Also, neighbors, families, in laws, friends, and so many different opinions. But to go through that time requires courage. And so I want to share your the book that is coming. And could you please tell about the chapter that seems you authored, chapter 5?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you can see, it launched September 20th, so we're 2 days out. So that was a huge day for me. This is the first time I'm a published author. It won't be the last, but it was an amazing experience that day. So we actually made it to not only bestseller in the U.S., but international bestsellers as well. And so that was a huge accomplishment. So we almost made it to number 1 in the U.S. We made it to number 3, so close. But we did it all without the Kindle version available, which is a huge thing because, it's only 99 cents. So that's something people easily go ahead and purchase. But so this was all paperback copies. Like, I don't know, to me, that's just mind blowing and amazing that, there are so many women out there searching for this kind of information or inspiration, and like we can be that impactful. There were several people that, are buying it to put in, women's shelters and, just have that inspiration for other people. There is so much life after these situations. We get so zoned in on, this is my life right now, these are my labels right now, that we forget it's just a season, and there's so much afterwards. And these women, there were 30 other women, so there's 31 women in the book with me, and their stories. I haven't been able to read them all, obviously. I'm still waiting for my copies as well. It's torture over here. But I got to hear, some of their interviews and connect with them more, obviously, on launch day, and their stories are just amazing. It's just miraculous, everything that they talk about and go through, they have gone through as well. It's Christian based as well, so just their faith and overcoming their obstacles. So yeah, my chapter is chapter 5, and I talk a lot about just my overall story. I pulled a few more details from it, but mainly my main focus was how you are valuable. And that has just been so much for me. I grew up in the church where, yes, we were told, God, wipes away all of our guilt and shame and everything, but, or wipes away our sins. But really, the way I was raised didn't go into wiping out that guilt and shame. In a lot of ways, it was actually used against you, to keep you in obedience, to make you feel guilty that you were still this horrible person. And that's not the case. Christ died for us. He did that once. He doesn't have to do it again. We don't have to live a life of suffering for him because we are sinful creatures. Yes, we sin every day, but we don't have to live in suffrage because, we're sinful human beings. It's not a because you did this, you get this kind of, mentality. And so my story just goes into so much about how you are valuable, your identity in Christ is for him. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. And yeah, we get put in messy situations sometimes, and, maybe they do come up sin or not, but they are beautiful and they're all for his purpose and plan and all for his glory. And, just coming from that, and once you know that, you can know your identity in Christ, and it's just a beautiful thing to me. So that was my main focus, was just having every woman know that they are valuable and they are worth it, and bringing it in. The reason I left my husband was because he was a pedophile, which seems like a huge thing. I would have thought, oh my gosh, everybody is just going to understand, that's just going to be understood. Of course I had to leave. He was an endangerment, all things, and absolutely not. No, I had pastors telling me, I had, several people be like, well, you sure you can't work it out? I had people who supported me and came back and asked that question, and, I just thought it would be obvious that I had to leave, and it's not. And and now having gone through that, and like I said, learning about narcissism and manipulation and truly living a happy life for Christ and being happy, there's so many more smaller things to leave a marriage over. And it's God glorifying, you know, like he doesn't want us to live in an oppressed relationship. We cannot glorify him when we are suffering like that, you know, like when we are being put down and, you know, being told we aren't valuable from a spouse or partner every single day. And maybe they're not even saying it, but you feel it, you know, you feel judgment for your choices you make, even if it's like, oh, I got to hurry home from the grocery store because he's going to be home after, you know, 5 o'clock for dinner or whatever. But, you know, so even if you don't, even though he's not directly saying, you know, you're a horrible person, you know, or these things, you can feel it in their energy and their tone and how they treat you. And that is not how God treats us, and that is not how we're meant to be treated. We cannot thrive in that kind of environment. And if you're not thriving, if you're just struggling to be in a relationship, just it's all this work just to be married, how are you supposed to glorify God through that? You have no.
That is just a brilliant thing to say. That is, yeah, I think that is so important for women to realize. Sometimes, though, I have known women that are so deeply involved in this, and men too. I'm not saying it only happens to women. There are men that are mistreated also, and that's a fact. But they are so into this that they cannot see what's happening. Do you try to counsel or help those people, or do they have to come to this realization themselves? I suffer for people who can't see what's wrong. It seems like they're too involved to know it somehow.
Yeah, you really have to come to it on your own. Obviously, you can't force. I mean, you know, obviously, in the case of an endangerment, you probably should force somebody to leave. But yeah, it is just amazing how we think it is normal. We think it's normal and okay, and a narcissist gets into your head, and it's called gaslighting a lot of times, but like they get into your head so well and so deep. They know you so intimately that they can use anything against you and manipulate your mind, that you make excuses for being hit. Like even physical action. Like, again, you would think, oh, I'm gone tomorrow if he hits me. It is not the case. So many women live with physical abuse, and then you get into the verbal abuse, which everybody, I'm not going to say one suffering is worse than another, because we all suffer and it's all our trials and it's all equal. But in some cases it is worse because it's in your head and you feel like you're going crazy because you can't, it's not real. It's not like a physical running from the bear kind of situation. It's in your head and you're like, was that what was said? Is that not what was said? Isn't that what happened? Because they will truly manipulate situations in the past to make you think what was happening was not. You know, and or what was, you know, like, oh, it's confusing. And so it's just this, I call it circles. It's just, you go around and around and around and around, and it makes you feel completely and totally crazy and manipulated, and to where you can't even make sense of it, and you learn to actually trust your abuser. You learn to go, well, I guess I don't know. That was really confusing time for me, you know. Yeah, you know, for me, I had a medical kid in the hospital. Well, I guess maybe I was too involved that day. Maybe that week I spent too much time at the hospital, you know, and then I was pregnant again right away. You know, well, I'm pregnant, I guess, you know, I don't know. You know, like, you make excuses for yourself. And I'm sorry, you're not that crazy. No woman is that crazy. They've taught us to, you know, think, oh, hormones, oh, this or that. You're not that crazy, you know. It's not how we were designed to be. Women were designed to do these things. We were designed to multitask, to multi-manage, and you're not that crazy. What you think is going on is going on. And unfortunately, yeah, so many women just don't. You can literally point it out to them. They can agree with you and say, yeah, I see what you're saying, and still go back.
And this is an interesting way you answer Candy's question, because what I hear, that it is so easy to be manipulated and kind of have your head absolutely confused and blaming yourself even, but also does it require a person like you? What I think the question was, who will help a woman who is so confused, so lost, to tell her, no, this is not in your head. It is not you. So it is, and explain, kind of help her to sort it out, lay it out, that, okay, look at this particular example. So I think it does require a coach or a counselor, right? So, And in your role, since you went through that, and the whole book of this female authors is called "She is an Overcomer." So that means to me that people who went through that, they become equipped in a way. But every situation still is very hard to identify as manipulation, right? So before we move to narcissism again, since you mentioned that word, let's stop on confidence and self-love as our first subtopic, because I think it is important for people to, first of all, to start with the woman herself, because the manipulator, the narcissist, will not stop doing what they're doing here, right? And should too. Sometimes in the relationship, men can be abused. We have to be fair, right? And that's what Candy brought up, that yes, it could be all either, but in the toxic relationships, I think we need to start with the person who suffers from abuse, from a narcissist, right? So what is going on and why? Why it is important to start with the woman in this case who is lacking those two things, confidence and self-love. Let's stop a little and talk about it.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, to kind of just continue to touch on that, like the narcissist will keep you isolated. And that's how they create that reality for you. And so that's why you do start to question yourself, and that's why you do doubt yourself, is because you are literally out of touch with reality. You are out of touch with how valuable you are to society, and they've got you pinned down into this is the only role you can do, or this is the only thing you can do, or this is how you can please me. And they have you thinking that basically the narcissist is your world, and that they are the only ones that matter. And you completely forget yourself, and you lose that confidence in yourself because you begin to rely on them in such a way that you can't do anything without them. You can't make decisions without them. You can't go places without them. You can't, just function in so many ways. It can get really bad. And, they do it for control. That's what they want. They just want to control you. Like, it's literally just evil. Like, I haven't done too much study into it and, stuff, especially biblically. Obviously, God can work miracles, but I truly believe a narcissist is just, pure possessed by the devil. There's just no way that someone is that truly evil, and can have any light of God in them. And obviously he can work miracles and save them. But when that person acts like that, they are so much just trying to destroy a woman of God, especially. And like you said, a man. Absolutely. I have come across relationships where I'm like, oh, that's her in the relationship. A man can definitely be repressed in a lot of ways.
So, Brigette, before we talk about confidence and self-love, let's define confidence, because I think the trick is here when women simply, or even surround people who surround this abused woman, that they just say, well, she's lacking confidence, or she's not self-confident. And I think we women sometimes also confuse this term as something that, we're just not strong. We just don't believe in ourselves. Confidence is really not that only thing, to believe in ourselves, which is, but it also to have determination, to have certain morals, to be tenacious, to have assurance and certainty that we are in the right place. So we believe in the right thing. You see, I think, maybe I'm wrong, tell me, Candy and Brigette, that am I right that if we kind of shift the definition of confidence toward that a certain system of beliefs, since you talk about faith, that no, I know my values, I know my morals, and so then it gives me immediate a sense of I am confident because I strongly believe in these things, right? So if anybody tells me, oh, she is just not self-confident, sorry. You see, then I immediately say, sorry, I am confident. But I think we just do not teach girls what is to be confident to begin with. So what do you think, both of you?
Brigette, you want to go? My very simple definition is just this. It's just the belief in yourself. That's what my confidence is. And I think that's it. And that I am in the church, so I believe in a higher power. But confidence is just kind of believing in myself as well. But I'd love to hear what Brigette has to say.
Yeah, no, exactly. I agree 100% with both what you said. It's having those values and sticking to them and being confident enough to stick with them and to stay with them and to keep pushing yourself forward. So if someone's manipulating you and you're easily swayed, not to, you don't have confidence. You don't truly hold up your values as well as you say you do. Because for me, I didn't even know I had lines in the sand, but apparently I did. And so once those hit, it was done. I was done. This is where the line was drawn for me. If you're going to hurt my kids, I'm out of here.
You say it's another synonym of confidence, which is fearlessness.
Mm-hmm.
You suddenly realize, no, this is who I am. Like what Candy says, this is confidence in myself. No, this is who I am, and you cannot shake me off this place.
Yep.
Then, since nothing changes, then this woman, or in this case you, has to live. So, confidence and self-love, why did you put them together?
I think Candy actually put that together perfectly, because if you don't, if it's not who you are, you don't love yourself. So how can you have confidence in that? If you don't love yourself, how will you have that confidence to stand up for yourself? And vice versa. If you don't have confidence, what are your values that you're standing up for? And you have to love yourself to have those values. But that was a circle. But I think she said it perfectly. And standing up for what you believe in is part of your self-love for yourself and your beliefs. When we see what the character of God is and apply that to ourselves, we have to love ourselves then. And when we see that, we have to love other people, because we are created in His image.
And it is something else precious in that self-love. Because going back to your book, to the chapter 5, in that book, that you mentioned the image of God in us. Mm-hmm. And that is very important, because in this case, you talk about something that is so precious that even the fact that something makes you stay in the relationship, but betraying that image within you, then you just say, no, I cannot do that. So could you talk about that?
Yeah, so that's, having that self-love, you have to love those parts of you, because we are made in the image of Christ. Originally we were not sinful human beings, so we have things about us that are absolutely beautiful and gorgeous, and our character and our personalities and our, traits are designed from God's image, from specific characteristics of Himself. And so you can't look at yourself and say, well, I'm horrible, I do these things, I do this and that, and granted, if you're doing it for sinful reasons, absolutely, that's wicked and that's of the devil. But if you're doing it out of a want and a desire to be better for God, it's beautiful. And we have to love ourselves for that. We have to give ourselves grace in that and love ourselves for that, because otherwise we're just spitting in God's face. We're just spitting in His creation. It's no different, if we walked out into nature and saw a tree and was like, well, and picked out all of its imperfections, but we don't. We walk out and say, look how beautiful and unique His nature is. Well, we're part of that. We're part of that creation, And so being created in His image, we have to love ourselves. And we have to love our neighbor, and we have to love other people and what we do and all our quirky things about us, and just embrace it. And it's so much more beautiful and not judgmental, and so much more freedom in that. And when we have that freedom to love ourselves, it builds our confidence, because, of course, if what we're doing is good, then we want to do more. It's the same as being a parent. If we, instead of, putting down our children for their bad behaviors all the time, we need to be praising them for all their good behaviors, so then they want to do more.
I would tell you that I am a peacemaker, and that's my personality type. I don't like conflict. I just like that. Let's all get along. Let's all love one another. And, that to me is, I think it does help me be accepting of others. And, there are little quirks in all our personality. It doesn't mean we're bad. It just means we're different. It's just the beauty of God's creation. But I think the thing that is important to me is to not lose myself when someone hits a button that just, no, I believe that's totally wrong. I cannot accept that or let them continue. I can maybe listen, but this is where I think we have to be so careful. I want to be able to listen to someone's opinion, but I want to be able to tell them, well, I really don't agree with you on that because this is what I believe. And so I think when it hits my beliefs or my core values, I have to stand up for myself there, but I hope that I'm able to accept other people for who they are and let that be okay too. What do you think about that? Is that an okay way to look at things, or should you be more careful than that? I'm not sure.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. It's having mutual respect. We're all human beings, and so if someone comes up to me and has their opinion, I don't have the right to sit in the seat of judgment, right? Like, I'm not God. I can't judge somebody else. I can absolutely I have the right to have my own opinions, just as they have the right to have their opinions. And so you want mutual respect. You want to speak your mind just as much. So you need to allow them to speak their mind. I mean, I think it's funny because I'm like, well, what an American way, but that is the exact opposite of America right now. It feels like, it feels like there is only one good opinion right now. And so, so to me, that is the ultimate way to look at it, and just beautiful. And I think we've gotten so legalistic in the church and society both, to where we can respect each other for our differences of opinions, and it's causing a lot of problems, it's causing a lot of division, it's causing a lot of anger, hate. And if we don't agree with something, there's so much truth in not agreeing with their opinion, but still loving that person, because they are a person. They still are created in the image of God. And I think even with my ex-husband and stuff, I truly do not hate him. I don't have any, I hate what he does. I hate the way he tries to manipulate me. I hate what he wanted to do to my kids. There is that. I still do have a care for him as a human being. I would never cause him harm. I would never put that right back on him. And so I absolutely agree 100% with that.
The other thing, I think when you're dealing with a narcissist too, what I've found so often is, of course, they try to confuse you, and you don't know right from wrong. Not right from wrong. Are they telling the truth or not? Because sometimes they will lie just as easily as they'll tell the truth. Sometimes they'll lie when the truth would serve them better. And I found that, which is just mind-blowing to me. And so what I wonder in that is that how do you, a narcissist doesn't want you to have your own opinion. So how do you do that? How do you navigate that? Or do you just have to say, I just cannot be around this person because of their narcissistic tendencies? Or can you sometimes you have to have a relationship with a narcissist. It's just because, you can't avoid it. But how do you handle it? I guess that's my question. That was a whole roundabout way. Sorry, Bridget. But I'm trying to understand how you would deal with this person if you have to, because you can't walk away. Okay, what do you do in that case?
Yeah, and that is the unfortunate thing, because obviously the answer is to just walk away. Christ doesn't want you sitting there suffering, for him in that aspect. It's not something that we have to go through. But there are situations, if it hadn't come out that he had the so drastically perverted sex issues he has, I probably would have to be in communication with him over, visitations or something, unfortunately, And so, if you can walk away is obviously the best answer. But when you do have to deal with it, having boundaries in place, knowing where your lines are, knowing what you're not going to back down on, and, that kind of thing, knowing whether or not it's time to get a lawyer involved, simple things like that. Like, where are those lines in the sand for you that you're not going to waver on? How much of your sanity are you willing to give up for the outcome? And what is that outcome? There are a lot of variables there too, depending on what's involved. If it's just a friendship or, whatever, if it's a relative that you see once a year, okay, we'll say hi at the family reunion. Nice to know you, But, if it's somebody you're involved with, somebody maybe you see every week at church, well, just protect your space, and there are ways of putting up mental boundaries even in your own head and letting what they say roll off of you and you go on, different things like that, and maybe, and then is there more drastic measures that need to be taken, if meaning, with a spouse, maybe moving out of state just so that they can't have visitation because, for you and your children, even though as parents, and your children will see what you do, your children will absolutely see what you do and recognize it, but in those informative years, if they still have involvement with that parent, it's going to influence them. So is it better ultimately to just, make the big scary choice and pack up and leave too, into a distance that he isn't capable of having visitation, or she, there's a lot there, but yeah, ultimately, I guess what I'm trying to say are those boundaries, what are those for you?
When it comes to narcissists, it's lots, so many moments when it's hard to identify what's going on, but we definitely sometimes feel almost sick. Unhappiness is one thing, happiness is very fleeting, but suddenly we start feeling nearly sick. We have our immune system, even if it is a long-term relationship, can start suffering. But so when we think about how women especially can get out of this relationship, I think since our audience is so different, we have people who are older, we have women, we have men, we have young people, married, unmarried. So I think since we are on the topic of narcissism, it's important to consider all of us. And from this point, what will be your advice when we find ourselves in the presence of a person who is toxic, who is definitely, we don't know narcissist or not, but we sense with our skin that if something is not right, I'm in the wrong place. So is it too rude to leave even the environment? Like, for example, we are in a conversation with a person who makes us feel not ourselves, lower, maybe not as confident, maybe not as happy. Is it rude to just leave that company and for whatever reason, but remove ourselves from the toxic environment?
I love that question. I love how pinpointed and exact you are, because I think those are the questions that are missing when we raise our daughters. Like, to feel that kind of, like, I have mulled over that so many times, and this is a drastic situation, but even in the case of like being raped or something, or being pushed further into a situation that is unhealthy that way, I don't know that I would have said no years ago, because I never knew it was okay to be rude to people, and so like we were just taught, be nice, be kind, be loving, be all these things. But when you're compromised, and I love how you said when you feel it in your skin, I call it intuition or energy, but when you feel it and you just know that something is wrong and off about the situation, it is okay. Absolutely. And I still struggle with that because, you struggle with your core, the core that you were raised with, but like, I want my kids to know it's okay to just be rude and be like, bye, peace out, for whatever reason, and that you don't have to sit there and go, well, what if, and granted, I think there's, certain social protocols you can go through, and you can, make sure you give a person enough chances for your own sanity as well, because you want to live with yourself, you don't want to keep questioning that one instance. But like, yeah, to just be like, I'm just not going to stand here and go do something else, and I think we were taught that, but we were never taught those details of like, why do you feel uncomfortable? What about this is making me uncomfortable?
Yeah.
And being able to verbalize those boundaries of uncomfortableness. And now, we can label it, narcissism and toxicity are new words being thrown around. We have labels for them, actually. I think we have for a while, but you know what I'm saying? And so, but being able to verbalize what those mean for you. What situations are for you. And so,
absolutely.
I love that so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And then, as Christian people, again, coming back to what you talked about in your chapter in that book that is called, again, I will find, what is the name of the book?
She is an Overcomer.
Yes, she's an overcomer. So from this point, what I think I want to bring up is that divine power that we have within us through that image of God. And to allow another person to hurt, to minimize that image, that power that we have within us, is against our faith. It's against God who gave us that image. And so we need to protect that image, and we need to protect ourselves and the space around us even. So, but unfortunately, not every person in the world takes responsibility for their toxicity. You know, we all can be toxic. Sometimes we get angry, we get upset, negative, you know, we are all people pleasers, but sometimes we just talking about boundaries. Sometimes, you know, people want to take revenge, and we know we shouldn't, but, you know, if somebody hurts us, we want to pay back. For that, in that case, we have to remember about that image and take responsibility for not being toxic, to protect other people's sense of power that they have within them. And I think that's one of the things that is important when we deal with narcissists. Another thing is when we give advice, maybe we will, since we are coming to the end, we will give advice to women especially, how to, in the relationship, protect ourselves from a narcissist. And one of the things I want to kind of jumpstart, and maybe you could pick up from there, like usually narcissists make us to compare ourselves to others. Did you experience that in your relationship?
Absolutely. Like,
okay, let's talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, so you definitely, like, that the comparison game, like, I want our family to be like that family. Like, I want to be like these people, you know, and especially in the church, you have your whole spectrum, you know, of we want to be like those people. And that's
sure.
My holiday card that we got this year. And, you know, and when you don't even know what's going on, you know, like, no family is what it seems from the outside. All those families have exactly the same struggles and issues and, you know, all the things. I'm not saying they're all living in narcissistic relationships, but you still have life. Like, when you take what you're doing and apply it to just a day, you know, of waking up and getting up and being in that person's shoes, it's all the same. We all have jobs that we have to go to. We all have this, we all have that, and none of it is perfect.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, they take those artificial things and they want to implement that and make it look perfect.
And nobody is perfect, but that's what I think narcissists, since they want to be perfect, they want to have a woman who's like a fetish, you know, so they just marry a person they think that will help them shine even more. But then the person comes with her own position in life, her own values, and then this is where the problem begins, because sometimes they kind of clash. And so that's why never compare yourself to others. That's principle number one, right? So which is another one? That women will understand that in a relationship that are toxic, in the relationship with a narcissist, what I've heard today when you said that, oh, we need to be like just other family, do not worry about other people's opinions much, right? So you could be standing out because of certain things, and even like a weight, you know, like how we look. And again, it comes back to number one: stop comparing yourself to others, because the husband sometimes say, look at Mary, oh, she is size 4, you know, look at how she walks. Oh, forget it, and don't worry about other people's opinion. Feel confident within yourself, right? And love yourself. So what other do you think advice we can give today?
I think from that comes also listening to those intuitions. If you know, once you start, if you were to start feeling comfortable in yourself like that, not comparing yourself to somebody else or trying to be the woman he wants you to be, or doing things that you think he wants you to do or she wants you to do, even though he's never said them, you know, from that comes leaning into those instinctual feelings of uncomfortableness. Like, wait, why is this uncomfortable? This shouldn't be uncomfortable. I shouldn't feel uncomfortable right now. You know, I shouldn't feel leaning into those, like, intuitive feelings of, like, why do I feel like I have to do that? Why do I feel like I have to make this special? Why do I feel like I should be doing something else? Why do I feel like this is wrong? You know, all those things. And like how often they happen, you know? Like if it's
Perfect.
a daily, hourly thing, believe me, I live that one, you know, there's a problem. So, yeah.
And that takes you to your motto that people can find on your website. So, and I like it. I will put it on the screen. Learn to trust yourself through the uncertainty of sudden life changes. That's what you're talking about. Yeah. Why do I feel this way? No, I feel this way because, you know, and finally diagnosing, kind of putting diagnosis over the situation, we find ourselves in, oh, my husband is toxic. My husband is narcissist. And then from that point, we step on the road toward healing. So we learn to trust ourselves. We learn to finally restore that confidence that God installed in us and the sense of self-love, but also just removing sometimes ourselves, regardless what other people say. But that's what I like it. Learn to trust yourself. Do not base your life on what other people say, but rather base it on what does not hurt and diminish your sense of who you are, that image of God that we have in us. Okay, so great. So Kenji, do you have anything at this point?
Do you know, there's just one last question maybe that was kind of running through my mind. What would you suggest how do you protect children from a narcissist if you can't totally do away with the relationship? If some kind of a relationship has to exist, how do you protect children?
My advice, what I'm going with right now, is raising my kids to recognize toxicity. You know, when I can't, you know, obviously living it out myself. I have to stand up. I have to be that confident, self-loving woman, and they can see that because they're going to model that. Because I know how much I model my parents. Like, I see things in them and I'm like, but mom does that, you know, mom is this way, you know, and I want to be that, you know. Our parents are such a huge role model in our life. And so I know that I have to be the woman I want my children to be, and I have to live that out. I can't just sit here and say, be confident. I have to go out and do those confident things, you know. I have to go out and you know, be what I want to be and live that life and be freer and not live with that judgment and not live with worrying about what other people think, or all the things we've talked about. I have to do those things and modeling that for them, however imperfect it is, because, you know, I don't think I'll ever be that perfect woman I imagine because of my issues. It's a healing journey and, you know, we're all on that path. But I think that's the biggest thing, is teaching them about toxicity and asking those hard questions, you know, and pointing things out to them in a very detailed, specific oriented way towards them, applying it towards them and having those conversations of, what are you feeling? Why are you feeling it? Is there a trigger? Is this triggering you from something else? Do you feel, leaning into those intuitions for them specifically, and being that guide and that counselor for them already, not being a parent in that situation, because nobody needs that. Nobody needs to sit down and be grilled, but actually just walking through it with them at that point as a friend, and just showing them how these relationships look and letting them also apply it to their own lives as they're growing up with other friends. I know even down to middle school, and my 7-year-old, can have friends who are like, it's probably not a good idea, and just starting it there and moving it up to work relationships, future boyfriend, girlfriends, all of that, and just, teaching that to them so that they can hopefully see what the other parent is like, because you do want to be careful, and you don't really want to diss their dad either, depending on the level of toxicity that's there. So that's what I'm going with right now, is just, leaning on God, trusting and praying that He will give me the insight and wisdom to teach my kids to just see more than I was, not being that little naive girl. So.
And I think that's the best advice. And I think, Andy, that's an excellent approach to parenting our children and grandparenting, because I thought what you hear, what I heard today from Brigette, is if we, first of all, set up by example how we live, but also treating children as sometimes equal. Yes, I know they're children, but if they are respected, if they are listened to, then that sense of confidence will be only increased in them with our help, but they won't even know that. But and also the same as self-love. I think if children sense that respect, that parents show them that their opinion does matter, but also I want to address a little of our Christian values that we sometimes overdo as parents, because hush hush in the church, don't speak, and then we are too much, and children stop even liking, relating to God, because they stop liking the church and don't trust God because they feel like it's just somebody who is over them. But also that pseudo idea of being too humble. You're Christian. You have to swallow that. No, Christianity is not about swallowing anything. Jesus Christ himself took the whip and showed that, his confidence that, the temple of God cannot be treated like that. So there are moments when we Christians have to take a strong position. And I think if we teach children honestly about God, this is who God is. God is very complex, not just, this and that. So then children will understand that sometimes this is who I am, and this I will make mistakes, but it's not deadly, right? But the main thing, I loved your principle. The main thing, learn to trust yourself. Because if we know that God's image is within us, that's what creates that trust. It can't be abused. But if we treat children like this, then they will know that they can go through any uncertainty of any sudden life changes with confidence, self-love, and be on a healthier side of their life. And funny and ironic enough, Candy, did you notice that this motto, I will bring it up again on the screen, uncertainty of sudden life changes, because our podcast is called Coping Life Talk, but originally we started with coping with sudden life changes. So I found it very, very interesting. What a coincidence. So thank you so much, Brigette. It was a pleasure to host you. It was wonderful to have you in our studio. Thank you, Candy, for your questions, for your presence. Anything in the end that we want to wish our viewers before we say goodbye?
I think we covered just about all of it. Thank you so much, Brigette. It was delightful to meet you and hear your story. That's very important information. Thank you.
It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Blessings to you. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, just thank you for having me. So yeah, I really appreciated this opportunity. So
blessings to you, and may God lead you and guide you to write more books to help women to understand and assess if their relationships are not coming from God. And I think that's key. That narcissists are definitely not sent to us by God, and we need to think about our boundaries. God bless you all.
All right, bye.